Severe thunderstorm warnings across southeast Queensland and northeastern New South Wales. Heavy rainfall streaming into the Hunter region. Tropical cyclone development potential in both the Coral Sea and off Western Australia. That's what we're looking at for the 17th of January 2026. I've examined the latest data from the Bureau of Meteorology, compared multiple forecast models, and analysed the synoptic situation across the continent. There's a fair bit to get through, so let's start with what's happening right now and work our way through the developing situations. Right now, conditions across southeast Queensland are absolutely vile. Brisbane sitting at 38 degrees with humidity off the charts. That sticky, oppressive heat where you're re-sweating just standing still. Mount Carbine in far north Queensland reporting similar conditions, too hot to do anything outside. That warm, moist air mass has been parked over the region all week. Compare that to what's happening further south. Cooler conditions are already pushing in. The Lockyer Valley seeing some interesting wind patterns, cool breezes followed by warm, sticky air, then back to cool again. That is the signature of a southeasterly change starting to work its way through. This afternoon and into this evening, we're re-looking at thunderstorm development across southeast Queensland and the northeast of New South Wales. Now, I need to be clear about this. This is not going to be a crazy outbreak. We are not talking November or December level activity here, but we will see some solid, half-decent thunderstorm activity, particularly in a couple of specific areas. The convective forecast models, which are our high-resolution, hyper-accurate models, are showing a couple of areas to watch. The scenic rim region stands out, the Lockyer Valley as well. These areas will be the hot seat through today. The Granite Belt and Darling Downs also in the firing line. Some of this activity may extend over into the Gold Coast hinterland. What we are seeing is a weak southeasterly change coming through. It's not a strong trigger. We're not looking at those powerful sea breeze gusts pushing close to 60 kilometres per hour that we sometimes see. Wind observations are relatively modest, 25 knots gusting 35 at Sydney Airport, 22 knots at Montague Island Lighthouse north of Bega, nothing particularly impressive. Because this is a weaker trigger, these thunderstorms are going to be fewer and more isolated in nature. They are going to be slow moving as well. The wind profile shows variable winds in the lower levels of the atmosphere between 5 to 10 knots. These storms will drift initially towards the northwest, then swing back northeast into a more typical pattern later tonight as they continue to develop. The main threat here is big rain dumpers, slow-moving thunderstorms with locally heavy to locally intense rainfall. Damaging wind gusts are possible. We've got some healthy convective available potential energy. Numbers between 1,500 to 2,000 joules per kilogram. That is nothing to scoff at. For late January, this is looking half decent for some hail. We may be looking at stones between 3 to 5 centimetres. Yesterday, northeastern New South Wales saw some pretty big hailstones around the 5 or 6 centimetre mark. Today, environment has slightly lower convective available potential energy and lift compared to yesterday, so we're not expecting quite the same size. There is an outside chance of some localised giant hailstones into the scenic rim, but the probability is pretty minimal. Glenn Innes reporting disgustingly humid conditions. Rain would be nice, they reckon. That's typical of this pattern. The humidity there, the instability building. But the rainfall has been patchy and inconsistent across the region. South Brisbane and southeast Queensland in general have been barren and hot with little rain, yet still copping the humid weather. That's been the frustrating part of this pattern. All the discomfort, not much of the relief. That may change somewhat today and tomorrow, but it's going to be hit and miss. Tomorrow, Sunday, we see a return to somewhat calmer conditions across southeast Queensland as stability increases. Still a few showers expected here and there. Heavy rainfall is forecast to be pretty prevalent across the New South Wales north coast and parts of the central coast. That southeasterly flow kicking up tonight will push showers and maybe the odd thunderstorm into southeastern Queensland out into the Warrego region. As far inland as Charleville through tomorrow afternoon and evening, we do have a little bit of convective available potential energy that increases the risk of thundery downpours tomorrow morning into early afternoon, especially around the Brisbane area. We may also see accumulations of small hailstones tomorrow late morning into early afternoon. Remain vigilant for that. Isolated but still very heavy rainfall is possible across southeast Queensland tomorrow afternoon and evening. Monday brings a return to calmer and more collected conditions across southeast Queensland. Limited shower and thunderstorm activity expected, just possible showers here and there for coastal regions. Tuesday, similar story. Wednesday, things return to a bit more of a stormy pattern as a trough sets itself up further inland. Thursday, Friday and Saturday, under the influence of high pressure building offshore into the Tasman Sea, things remain a little bit calmer through the southeast coast. Now, shifting our focus to the New South Wales Central Coast and Hunter region. Right now, we've got heavy rainfall setting itself up into the Hunter region. A few thunderstorms and showers just offshore from the Hunter and Sydney regions. Some showers getting jammed up into the Warragamba area. There's a weak low pressure system situated offshore from the central coast of New South Wales tracking northeast. Throughout today, we are going to see heavy showers and thunderstorms streaming into this part of the coastline. Falls between 40 to 80 millimetres expected, increasing to 120 millimetres in a few spots, particularly exposed coastal locations. Nelson Bay area around Newcastle as far north as Kempsey and Port Macquarie. Rainfall accumulations into the Barrington tops may exceed 100 millimetres. That is the sort of rainfall we are expecting from this low pressure system tracking northeast. This is rainfall coming out of that southeasterly pattern getting jammed up against the coastline throughout the afternoon and evening. Showers will move progressively more north throughout the remainder of today and into tomorrow, where the heaviest rainfall is expected around the Forster and Port Macquarie area. We'll be keeping close tabs on that situation. In terms of flooding or flash flooding risk, it's pretty minimal right now. I am not expecting anything too crazy. Earlier in the week, some forecast models were showing some pretty wacky numbers, but they've since backed off. We were never looking at 500 or 600 millimetres. For that sort of rainfall to develop, we do need a very strong low pressure system, and we just don't have that. You'd be hard pushed to really detect where the low pressure system is right now based on visible satellite imagery. It is such a weak, messy and disorganised system along the New South Wales coastline. The wind observations support that assessment. Nothing special. This is not a strong low pressure system. Let's turn things tropical now. There are a couple of points of interest around the Nation S tropics worth monitoring. We have the remnants of ex-tropical cyclone Koji around the Darwin area. This is bringing very heavy rainfall to Darwin and coastal locations around the Joseph Bonaparte Gulf throughout the remainder of today. The Bureau is calling this system Tropical Low 16U. The monsoon trough remains very weak across the Northern Territory and into the Kimberley region of Western Australia. A lot of the monsoonal activity has departed from North Queensland. Rainfall is now going to reduce significantly over the next couple of days for most areas. In fact, for most areas, rainfall is going to clear out completely. That'll give rivers time to drop and water levels to recede, which is very good news. We do have some very significant flooding ongoing, particularly in northwestern Queensland and into the central coalfields and highlands. Bob from that region reporting the wettest day this year was 81.2 millimetres on the 4th of January. Total this year, 299.2 millimetres over 15 days. That S well ahead of last year. S pace to this day, which was only 69.4 millimetres. Still below the average of 402.5 millimetres though. Only minor flooding so far because the parched ground has been sucking up the rain. Update from Emerald shows Cyclone Koji ended up delivering a bit for the dam. It was at 16%, now at almost 21%. Shame they didn't get more, but any increase is welcome. Tropical Low 14U is spinning itself up quite nicely in the Coral Sea. It's got a nice central dense overcast, that cluster of thunderstorms around the storm centre. Monsoonal flow from the Solomon Sea around the Solomon Islands heading towards Vanuatu and New Caledonia is feeding the system. This system is expected to make a U-turn, bypassing New Caledonia now and heading towards Norfolk Island, then eventually off towards New Zealand. No threat to either of those locations, though New Caledonia may get cyclonic force winds early next week, depending on development. In terms of a Queensland threat, this system is not expected to approach Queensland in any meaningful capacity. It is not going to come within about 1,500 kilometres of the Queensland coastline. That is good news. Queensland just does not need another tropical cyclone right now. The future tropical picture shows something developing around the Cape York Peninsula in about 5 or 6 days. That S likely to move out into the Coral Sea where development is expected. We are likely to see a tropical low offshore from the north and far north Queensland coast. The Bureau is calling for low U17 to form in the Gulf and cross over into the Coral Sea next week. Whether we get a lot of rain from it depends on the track it takes. We're re-expecting an enhancement in shower and thunderstorm activity throughout the remainder of this weekend, really picking up through the Cape York Peninsula as we head into next week. Significant rain accumulations expected on the western edge of Cape York Peninsula around the Gulf of Carpentaria. Heavy showers and thunderstorms at times through Tuesday and Wednesday across much of Cape York. This is where we're re-expecting the tropical low to begin development, either in the Gulf or out into the Coral Sea. Likely to kick itself up sometime around Tuesday or Wednesday next week. That will translate to isolated areas of very heavy rainfall through Cape York, potentially down into the Daintree rainforest and maybe the Cassowary coast as well. Someone meant to be moving house in the Daintree on Monday the 19th or Tuesday the 20th. It's been pretty dry and crossings are relatively low. From what I am seeing, there is a chance you may need to reschedule. Keep a close watch on the situation. The future of this system remains relatively uncertain. It's heavily dependent on where the monsoon trough sets itself up. We're likely to see this system head out into the Coral Sea with a general southeasterly motion expected. If it does get out into the Coral Sea, and it's very likely now, it is actually going to pull away from the Queensland coastline as it intensifies. Queensland impacts are expected to be pretty minimal if they even occur. Things can change, and that's why we monitor these situations closely. But right now, this is not a major concern for Queensland in any way, shape or form. Some of the more aggressive ensemble models are calling for this storm to make a bit of a turn towards Queensland, then turn away. Either way, it's not expected to make landfall at this point. Definitely not as a tropical cyclone in the next week or so. We may be talking about some periods of heavy rainfall through the far north coastline of Queensland, but I am pretty uncertain on this right now. This system is pulling away from Queensland, relatively speaking, rather than drawing into the coastline. It's also not expected to be an absolutely massive system anymore. A couple of forecast runs ago, we were talking around that tropical Cyclone Koji development size, which was huge. Right now, I am leaning towards a similar story to what Koji was doing as it developed. Very broad and messy system, but this one slightly smaller and slightly more organised. Moving over to Western Australia, this is a very interesting situation. We could be talking about a pretty significant system offshore from Western Australia. The reason is the amount of rainfall developing around the Joseph Bonaparte Gulf. There's a lot of moisture in the atmosphere coming in from the monsoon. This weekend is going to be significant rainfall-wise through parts of the top end, particularly the northwest coast around the Darwin area. Bureau had lots of rain forecasts for Darwin today, yet not a drop has fallen so far. That's not unusual. Timing with these tropical systems can be tricky. Looking at 7-day rainfall accumulations, maximum numbers around the Darwin area between 200 to 500 millimetres, increasing closer to the coastline, getting up towards 400, 500, 600 millimetre mark, even up towards 700 millimetres. Offshore, because of the stagnant nature of this low pressure system, massive rainfall accumulations become a possibility. The general trend with forecast models keeps the 1500 millimetre plus rainfall accumulations far enough offshore that they were not a concern for the Northern Territory coastline. The majority of this rainfall, regardless of how this system develops, is expected to be coastal based. That means flooding is not expected to be a major problem. For those in the northwest, particularly between Darwin down to Coonawarra or Wyndham along the coastline, expect to be cut off for a prolonged period. Anywhere more than 200 or 300 millimetres in these areas will cause damage to the road network, particularly unsealed roads. Significant rises to river levels can be expected. Access should be restored by late next week towards early next weekend. If you live outside of Darwin but south of Darwin down towards Coonawarra and Wyndham, plan ahead. Prepare to be cut off for a prolonged period if you have dirt road access. Sealed roads shouldn't be a problem unless there is flooding, which is not expected to be a significant concern right now. The forecast for this system has changed a little from yesterday. What we were looking at is the European forecast taking the system into the Kimberley region, then hugging the West Australian coastline through next week through its formative stages. Over the last couple of days, we've been seeing this system head out into the Indian Ocean pretty consistently, then making a U-turn back towards Western Australia towards the end of next week. This system isn't expected to get ridiculously far away from the West Australian coastline. We're not going to see it get close to Indonesia. It's expected to remain far enough away that significant intensification remains a possibility. With the system as current forecast track hugging the coastline before diving inland, that is a possibility right now. Something that could throw nails into the forecast. Whether this system hugs the Kimberley or Pilbara coastline is another aspect we need to watch closely. If it does, we'll be talking about a much weaker and much less dangerous tropical cyclone threat. If this system takes a more west-southwesterly motion, then a sharp southeasterly motion into the Kimberley or Pilbara coastline by the end of next week, we could be talking about a very high-end severe tropical cyclone impact. Category 3 up towards Category 5. This is definitely something worth watching right now. My advice to people between Broome down to Exmouth, including Karratha, Onslow, Port Hedland and other adjacent communities, particularly those within about 100 kilometres of the coastline, watch this space very closely. There's no immediate tropical cyclone threat right now, but one may be developing in the next couple of days. All the more reliable forecast models are suggesting the system remains on that further offshore track, which does mean a much more significant tropical cyclone impact is a possibility. Details are still pretty murky, and considering we've had a different run from the European model this morning, that throws a couple of spanners in the works, inconsistencies and incongruencies on the forecast models. Some of the major forecast models, not to incite panic or worry, but the ICON model is showing a cyclone Vance type situation. Exmouth with a 928 to 930 hectopascal system. We're to be looking at winds well in excess of 250 kilometres per hour. That would flatten Exmouth. It gives you the idea that if something gets offshore, it won't have much standing in its way. A very significant tropical cyclone remains a possibility. For those between Broome and Exmouth, this is worth watching. Category 3 to 5 potential if this system develops as forecast. That S, not sensationalism. That S, what the models are showing. But at S, still 5 to 7 days away, and a lot can change. Cairns and far north Queensland folks wanting things to get cooler and less humid. People are getting agitated. The build-up is definitely on. We need this heat to clash with something to break the pattern, and that's what we are expecting next week with the tropical low development. Townsville saw flash flooding randomly earlier. Rain has been hit and miss. Some areas copping it, others bone dry. Alpha reporting raining cats and dogs at the time of some reports. Central Queensland stinking hot and humid. That's the nature of this monsoonal pattern. Very hit and miss with the rainfall. Looking ahead for southeast Queensland specifically, why has Brisbane been so dry? That S, the question many are asking, all going to the graveyard or up in the tropics. We really haven't had any good rains yet for the wet season down there. It's been frustrating. The pattern we're in has moisture, has heat, has instability, but the focus for heavy rain has been either further north or out to sea. The low pressure systems haven't been tracking in the right spots for Brisbane. That may change as we head into February and the monsoon becomes more established, but for now it's been a relatively dry start to the wet season for the southeast. If the Lamb Range near Cairns gets much drier, it'll burn and there will be no stopping it. That's a concern. Fire danger in tropical areas during dry spells is often underestimated. The fuel load is massive. If it dries out and ignites, it's extremely difficult to control. For those asking about live coverage of storms in New South Wales or Queensland today, the convection is getting puffy. Keep an eye on the Bureau S warnings. The activity will be scattered and isolated, so it's difficult to predict exactly where the strongest storms will develop. To wrap things up, here is what you need to know. Southeast Queensland and northeast New South Wales, thunderstorms this afternoon and evening. Slow moving with heavy rain, the main threat. Hail possible, 3 to 5 centimetre range. Damaging winds possible, but not the primary concern. Tomorrow, showers and possible thunderstorms continuing, especially morning into early afternoon around Brisbane, New South Wales Hunter and Central Coast. Heavy rain continuing today into tomorrow. 40 to 120 millimetres, locally higher in exposed areas. Minor flooding possible, but not expected to be significant. Far north Queensland and Cape York. Tropical low development likely Tuesday or Wednesday next week. Heavy rain possible, but system expected to track into Coral Sea and pull away from coast. Queensland landfall not expected. Northern Territory, Darwin region, very heavy rain this weekend from remnants of ex-tropical cyclone Koji, 200 to 500 millimetres, locally higher near coast. Road access may be cut between Darwin and Kununurra. Prepare accordingly. Western Australia, Kimberley to Pilbara. Developing tropical cyclone threat late next week. Potential for category 3 to 5 system. Too early for specific details, but worth monitoring closely. This could be significant. That is the situation as it stands on the 17th of January 2026. Conditions are active across the tropics, humid and unstable across the east, with multiple systems to monitor over the coming week. Keep an eye on the Bureau of Meteorology for the latest warnings and forecasts. Check the forecast regularly, especially if you are in the areas mentioned. Things can change quickly with tropical systems. Stay safe, look after your mates, and we'll keep monitoring these developing